In 1854, a British survey team pulled a cracked clay tablet from a mound in southern Iraq. For nearly 100 years, no one could agree on what it said. When it was finally translated, the words fit nothing scholars expected. The tablet did not record a war, a king, or a harvest. It described a doorway made of water, and it claimed that if you entered it correctly, you would arrive somewhere else, a place with streets, buildings, and people already waiting. The Sumerians called that place the E-Abzu, and the tablet did not treat it as a story. It treated it as an address. To understand why that matters, you need to know who wrote it. The Sumerians were not a small tribe scratching marks into mud. They were the first documented civilization on Earth. They built the first cities, invented writing, drew the first maps, and kept the first laws. Everything that came after them, Babylon, Assyria, even the earliest pages of the Bible, was built on the foundation they laid first, and they left us their words. Hundreds of thousands of clay tablets baked hard by the Mesopotamian heat, buried and preserved for 5,000 years. Most of them are almost boring. Receipts, inventories, a complaint about a bad copper shipment, the ordinary paperwork of an ordinary world. But a small number describes something the others do not. Beings who came down from above, beings who came up from below, knowledge given to humanity rather than discovered by it, and again, a place of fresh water beneath the world, the E-Abzu. In standard translation, the E-Abzu is the underground ocean, the body of sweet water the Sumerians believed fed every river and spring. The god who ruled it was Enki, the god of wisdom and craft, the one who quietly saved humanity in story after story when the other gods wanted it gone. For a long time, scholars filed all of this under mythology, poetic but not literal. The tablet we are talking about does not read like poetry. It reads like instructions. It does not say the E-Abzu is sacred. It says the E-Abzu has an entrance. It names the city built directly on top of that entrance, and says the city was placed there for exactly that reason. The language is the same flat, practical language the Sumerians used for grain counts and property lines. The tablet came out of the ground near a place now called Tel Abu Shahrain. To the Sumerians, that place had another name. They called it Eridu. And Eridu was not just any city. Their king list, the document recording their entire history, opens with a single line. When kingship first came down from the heavens, it came down at Eridu. That alone would be strange. It gets stranger when you look at what stood at the center of Eridu. The most important building in the city was a temple, and that temple had a name, the E-Abzu. Translated directly, that means the house of the E-Abzu. They did not build a temple to honor the E-Abzu from a distance. They named the building the E-Abzu, as if the temple was not pointing at the doorway but was the doorway. When archaeologists dug down through the layers of Eridu, they found something that has bothered researchers ever since. Temple built on temple, around 18 layers deep, each one constructed directly on the ruins of the one before it, all of them on the same exact spot. For thousands of years, every generation rebuilt the same building in the same place. They never moved it once, as if whatever the temple was built over was still there. At the heart of that temple, the texts tell us, there was a basin of water. The tablet describes that basin as a threshold. On one side, the world of people. On the other, the world of the E-Abzu. And it says the two were not far apart, separated by something thinner than a wall. The surviving passage describes the crossing in specific terms. The water had to be completely still, kept in darkness, away from sunlight, silent, and the crossing could only only happen at specific times. The doorway opened on a schedule. Someone or something kept that schedule. A doorway that opens and closes is not a metaphor. A myth does not have a timetable. You do not need a schedule for a story. You need a schedule for a door. The tablet calls the person who made the crossing the one who descends, a specific role, a kind of priest, treated with the weight a modern document would give to someone trusted with something dangerous. This figure looked into the still dark water and saw not a reflection, but the other side. Then the clay breaks. The most important sentence in the fragment, the moment of crossing itself, is gone. But the tablet does not stop at the doorway. It goes through it, and it describes what is waiting. On the other side, according to the tablet, there is a city, not a cave, not an underworld of shadows. A city, streets laid out in a deliberate pattern, buildings that give off their own light, air that is still and warm, water woven through the architecture like roads, and a sound, a low, constant tone that never stopped, which the Sumerian translators rendered using the same word for the hum of a beehive and the noise a large crowd makes from very far away. The tablet implies the city was old, older than Eridu, older than the surface itself. Eridu above was a copy, a reflection built on dry land of something that already existed below. Then the tablet describes who lives there, and this is where the story connects to something much larger. Throughout their writings, the Sumerians described the Apkallu, the 7 sages, beings who came to humanity before the Great Flood and brought the foundation of civilization, law, writing, mathematics, agriculture, the design of cities. Humanity did not invent these things. The Apkallu delivered them. The Apkallu are almost always described and drawn the same way, covered in the skin of a fish, coming out of the water. The most famous account, written by a Babylonian priest named Berossus, describes a being called Oannes, who rose from the Persian Gulf. A creature that spoke as a man, came onto land each day to teach, and returned to the water each night. The tablet from Eridu suggests the Apkallu were not symbols, they were residents. They came from the water because they came from the city in the E-Abzu, and the doorway in the temple was the door they used. The tablet goes further. It describes what the Apkallu were guarding inside that city, the me. One of the strangest concepts in all of Sumerian writing, the me were not quite objects and not quite laws. The closest translation is the blueprints of civilization, master patterns for kingship, priesthood, craft, music, truth, and falsehood. Whoever held the me held the ability to shape the world. According to Sumerian myth, they were kept in the E-Abzu under Enki's control. The Apkallu were not generous teachers. They were keepers of an archive never meant to be handed over, which raises a question the tablet seems to have anticipated. If the knowledge was being guarded, it was being kept from someone, and if it was being kept from someone, giving it away was a violation. The final readable section shifts in tone from everything before it. The earlier passages are calm, descriptive, almost clerical. The final section reads like a warning. It names a second group, the Anunnaki, the great gods, the high powers, and states plainly that the city and everything stored inside it belonged not to the Apkallu, but to the Anunnaki. The Apkallu were staff. The knowledge they handed to humanity through the doorway in the water was never theirs to give. The tablet describes the reaction. The doorway was closed, not destroyed, sealed. From the other side, the still water in the temple went quiet. The descent stopped. The Apkallu did not come again. And then the tablet says something that has kept researchers awake. The door can be opened from this side. The closing was a lock, and the tablet, in its final lines, appears to describe the conditions under which the water in the basin would become a threshold again. That passage does not survive intact. The clay is broken exactly there. What remains is one repeated word the translators rendered as a caution, close to the Sumerian for do not. The tablet describes how to open the door, and then it tells you not to. Eridu still exists. The mound is still there in southern Iraq. 18 layers of temple stacked in the sand, all of them centered on the same unmoving point. People do not behave that way about a metaphor. They do not rebuild the identical structure on the identical ground for 3,000 years unless they believe the ground itself is the point. The tablet says the ground was the point, and it says the lock is still a lock.